In the 1960s, the Monkees were everywhere. They weren't just a band. They were a TV show. They were a marketing machine. They were a cultural storm. But 20 years later, they somehow rose to the top of pop culture again, and then someone tried to reboot them. Today, I'm telling you the story about how the Monkees rose, fell, rose again, and how the new Monkees proved that lightning doesn't always strike twice.
Hey, let's make some Kool-Aid.
Make friends with Kool-Aid. Make Kool-Aid with friends. Make friends with Kool-Aid.
When you get crazy thirsty, have a glass of Kool-Aid. It's cool.
By the mid-1980s, nostalgia was in full swing, and TV producers were realizing that they could take old hits and turn them into today's programming. The Disney Channel had recently launched the new Leave It to Beaver in 1984, a sequel series that brought back most of the original cast as adults raising their own kids. NBC revived The Munsters in 1988, a color reboot of the 1960s monster sitcom, and in 1986, New Gidget was updated for 80s teens and families. So when Columbia Pictures Television went looking for their own reboot, they thought, well, if you can reboot The Munsters, if you can reboot Leave It to Beaver, if you can reboot Gidget, why not the Monkees? I think it's important to truly remember what the Monkees originally were. The band started out with an advertisement. The year was 1965. NBC and Screen Gems wanted a sitcom about a Beatles-style band. The ad said, "Madness, audition for 4 insane boys." 400 hopefuls lined up. These auditions drew in a lot of big talent. Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills and Nash, not chosen to be a Monkee. The great Paul Williams was not chosen to be a Monkee. Danny Hutton, the eventual founder of Three Dog Night, he wasn't picked. There are some rumors that Charles Manson auditioned for this. But here's who they chose. Mickey Dolenz of Los Angeles. He was a former child star who, when he was 10 years old, had been at a TV show called Circus Boy. He had also appeared in some commercials and other television shows. Davy Jones from Manchester, England, who is an actor who had appeared on Coronation Street, which is a British soap opera. He had won the role of the Artful Dodger in Oliver, and when Oliver moved to Broadway, he moved to America. Peter Tork, born Peter Torkelson. His father was an economics professor. His childhood included moving around a lot. He grew up studying music and he learned piano from about age 9. He also learned how to play the guitar, the banjo, and the acoustic bass. It was his buddy Stephen Stills that encouraged him to go to the audition. Mike Nesmith of Houston, Texas. He had served in the U.S. Air Force after high school, and he was very into folk music. He had learned guitar and wrote songs. He had also released a few singles prior to auditioning for the Monkees. They weren't hired as a band, they were cast as TV characters. But here's the twist. The fake band became a real band, and their song, Last Train to Clarksville, became a #1 hit before the show even launched. By 1967, they were dominating the charts, and in that year alone, the Monkees released 4 #1 albums. No single act, even the Beatles, ever matched that feat in a single year. Critics sneered, and they called them the Prefab Four. But the audiences didn't care. They were a hit. But here's the problem the band had. Initially, they weren't playing their own instruments on their recordings. Session musicians from the legendary Wrecking Crew handled the tracks while the Monkees sang. Critics and purists complained that they were just actors pretending to be musicians. And that label, Prefab Four, stung, even though the band was still climbing the charts. By their third album, Headquarters, they demanded and earned the right to play their own instruments. They wrote and performed much of the material themselves. Suddenly, the Prefab Four were musicians in their own right, although some critics never let go of that label. You may have heard this fact. This fact has cycled around forever. In 1967, the Monkees outsold the Beatles and the Rolling Stones combined. Sounds amazing. Sounds hard to believe, because it is not true. Mike said this as a joke to a reporter in 1977, and it was published, and it sounded like maybe it's plausible, and so the rumor was passed down, and still to this day, I see this thing pop up on Facebook at least once a year. The reality was that the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were still selling just fine, but the Monkees having 4 number 1 hit albums in the same year is just jaw-dropping. Here's another secret twist. Mike Nesmith was not only a Monkee, he was an heir to a fortune. His mother, Betty Nesmith Graham, invented liquid paper. This is the whiteout correction fluid. She sold the company to Gillette in 1979. For about $50 million. $50 million in 1979 dollars. So Nesmith inherited millions, and instead of blowing it, being a rock star, he invested it. He became a pioneer in music videos and helped inspire MTV itself. He was the serious Monkee, and he wasn't just strumming a guitar, he was quietly shaping pop culture behind the scenes. Cut to 1986, when MTV decided to roll the dice. For the Monkees' 20th anniversary, MTV ran the show in marathon blocks non-stop. And shockingly, it worked. A whole new generation got hooked on the Monkees, myself included. That year, the Monkees were back on the charts, back on tour, and back in the spotlight. They even put out a new album called Pull It. Critics shrugged, but the fans were happy. Monkee-mania 2.0 was real. However, Mike Nesmith skipped most of the 1980s reunions. Dolenz, Jones, and Torque did all the tours, and Nesmith showed up only once in 1986 for a Hollywood Bowl encore.
My name is Helen, and I live with these 4 rock stars in a house you're just never gonna believe.
Somebody out there thought, if the old Monkees could make a comeback, maybe it's time for us to have some new Monkees. Producers cast 4 replacements. They got a syndicated TV show through Columbia Pictures Television. They got an album, and they got the impossible task of trying to fill the shoes of legends. The show only lasted 1 season and is pretty much forgotten, but not completely. On November 11, 2017, all 4 new Monkees attended a 30-year reunion organized by Amy Cullen. They were interviewed for the podcast Deep Dish Radio, and they even performed a few songs. Then, on February 16, 2019, they performed a concert at the Pig and Whistle, which is a restaurant on Hollywood Boulevard. And on that night, they were joined by none other than Mickey Dolenz. Now, as for the real Monkees, after the reboot crashed, they just kept going. They kept touring, recording, living off the love of fans who didn't want replacements. They proved something the reboot never understood. Even if the Monkees started as a casting call, by the end they were family. And you just can't recast family. Now here's a weird story. In 1988, Run DMC released a rap song called Mary Mary. They sampled an old Michael Nesmith written Monkees song. Take a listen.
Mary, Mary, I need your hugging.
Mike Nesmith said he just loved their take on it. And he wasn't bothered at all by them changing the lyrics because he said the lyrics weren't that deep. And this sort of became another hit for the Monkees. This song, while they were only sampled from an older song, Run DMC, this was the only song from their entire album, Tougher Than Leather, that broke into the Billboard Hot 100, and it peaked at 75. The Monkees story is one of the strangest in music history. A band born in a TV studio turned real, revived by nostalgia, and rebooted into oblivion. The original Monkees, they're still remembered. And the new Monkees, they're mostly remembered for not being the real Monkees. The Monkees worked because they became more than a TV gimmick. They became real. The reboot forgot that, and that's why it vanished quicker than you could say, hey, hey, we're the Monkees. Hey, I want to tell you about my Patreon. I want you to go over there. You can sign up for free, and I post on there lots of different things, some pictures, some nostalgic stories, and a lot of times I'll show weird behind-the-scenes stuff from these videos, so gotta go over there, check it out. Some of that comes up for free. Now, some of that, if you want it, you got to bump up to the $3 level. And for that, I'll send you a postcard in the mail. I'll handwrite it, send it out to you every single month. And if you go up to $5, I'll put your name on the screen. I think it's this side. Everything's backwards for me. But I'll put your name on the screen. And then if you go all the way up to $9, top level, you're going to get my newsletter in the mail every month. I write a lot of nostalgia articles just for you guys. I think you'll love it. And you're also going to get me to read your name at the end of every single video. And it doesn't even have to be just your name. I've read the names of pets. I've read the names of YouTube channels. Go ahead, go over there to Patreon. Challenge me with something that I don't want to read. But I hope you go check it out. And if you do, get your name in that roll of honor at that top level. You'll hear me say it, just like I'm about to say the following names: Aaron Wester, Al, Archer, Carson Loveridge, Chris, Dana Snyder, M, Jason Evans, Jason Yealy, Jarrett Rusky, Jamie and Tom, Jen, Matthew Chapin, Mike and Jess, my big brother Rob, Nick Roche, and Robert Berry. Well, that's going to do it for this one. I'll see you next time.